shadows of deceit. The beginning. My name is James Carter, and this is a story I never thought I'd have to tell. It's a tale of love, trust, betrayal, and the slow unraveling of a life I thought I knew. I was once a man who believed in the enduring strength of love and the sanctity of marriage. I was once a man who believed that trust was the cornerstone of any relationship. But life, as it turns out, has a way of shattering even the strongest beliefs. I met Lily during my last year at Oxford. She was a vision of grace and beauty, with long chestnut hair that shimmered in the sunlight and deep blue eyes that seemed to hold a universe of secrets. We were both young, full of dreams and ambitions, ready to take on the world. I was studying law, with the hope of becoming a successful barrister, while Lily was pursuing a degree in art history. She had a passion for the Renaissance, for the great masters who had painted their way into the annals of history. It was at a gallery in London where we first truly connected. I had always been a fan of art, though my understanding of it was rudimentary at best. That evening, however, as I stood before a painting by Caravaggio, I found myself lost in the depths of shadow and light. Lily approached me, her voice as soft as a whisper, and began to explain the significance of the piece. I listened, enthralled, not just by the painting but by her words, her passion, her knowledge. It was in that moment that I knew I had to know more about her. Our courtship was swift, intense, and filled with the kind of romantic gestures one might find in the pages of a novel. We spent long weekends exploring the countryside, visiting every art gallery we could find, and talking late into the night about everything and nothing. It wasn't long before I realized that Lily was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I proposed to her on a rainy day in Paris, under the shelter of a small cafe by the Seine. She said yes, tears of joy in her eyes, and we were married 6 months later in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. Our first few years of marriage were blissful. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs of London, a place where we could build our lives together. I focused on my career, quickly rising through the ranks at a prestigious law firm, while Lily pursued her passion for art, working as a curator at a local gallery. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. But looking back, I can see now that there were signs, small cracks in the foundation of our marriage that I chose to ignore. It started with little things: Lily's late nights at the gallery, her sudden interest in new friends I had never met, the way she would sometimes withdraw into herself, lost in thoughts she wouldn't share with me. I chalked it up to the stresses of life, to the pressures of her work, and never once did I question her fidelity. After all, we had promised to be faithful to each other until death do us part. I trusted her completely, and that trust was my downfall. The first suspicion. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I first began to suspect that something was amiss. We were sitting in the living room, the sun streaming through the windows, casting a warm, golden glow over everything. Lily was curled up on the sofa, a book in her hands, while I was going through some legal briefs for an upcoming case. Everything seemed normal, peaceful even, but there was an unease in the air that I couldn't quite place. Lily had been distant for weeks, her usual warmth replaced by a cool detachment that I found unsettling. She was still kind, still affectionate, but there was something missing, something I couldn't put my finger on. I asked her about it, of course, but she would just smile and assure me that everything was fine, that she was just tired, that work was stressful. And I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But that Sunday, as she sat there with her book, I noticed something strange. Her phone, which was usually by her side, was nowhere to be seen. Lily was never one to be glued to her phone, but she always kept it nearby, especially when she was expecting a call from the gallery. I didn't think much of it at first. But as the afternoon wore on, and she continued to glance nervously towards the hallway, where I knew her phone was charging, I began to feel a growing sense of unease. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, I found myself in the hallway, staring at her phone. It was a ridiculous impulse, one that I immediately chastised myself for. I had no reason to doubt her, no reason to invade her privacy. But something in the pit of my stomach told me that I needed to know, that I needed to see for myself if there was something she wasn't telling me. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling slightly as I unlocked it. I told myself that I would just look at her messages, that I would only check to see if there was anything unusual. But what I found was far worse than anything I could have imagined. There, in the list of recent messages, was a conversation with a name I didn't recognize: Henry. The messages were brief, vague, but there was a familiarity to them, a closeness that sent a chill down my spine. They talked about meeting up, about how much they missed each other, about things that were too intimate to be just friends. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrolled through the conversation, a sickening realization dawning on me. Lily was seeing someone else. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the phone in my hand, my mind racing. How could this be happening? How could the woman I loved, the woman I trusted more than anyone in the world, be cheating on me? I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but I knew that if I did, there would be no going back. Our marriage would be over, and I wasn't ready to face that possibility. So instead, I put the phone back where I found it and went to bed, my mind swirling with 1,000 thoughts. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I should do, what I could do. Should I confront her? Should I try to save our marriage? Or was it already too late? I didn't know, and the uncertainty was tearing me apart. The investigation. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I went through the motions at work, putting on a brave face for my colleagues, but inside I was a mess. I couldn't stop thinking about the messages, about the betrayal, about the man named Henry who had somehow come between us. I needed answers, but I didn't know how to get them. I started to pay more attention to Lily's behavior, looking for any sign that might confirm my suspicions. I noticed that she was spending more time away from home, often leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. She would say that she was working on a new exhibit at the gallery, but I knew better. There was no exhibit, no late-night meetings, no reason for her to be gone so often. One evening, I decided to follow her. It was a desperate move, one that I knew could backfire, but I was at my wit's end. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. So, when Lily said she was going out to meet a friend for dinner, I waited until she left and then followed her in my car. She drove to a small, upscale restaurant on the other side of town, a place we had never been to together. I parked a few blocks away and watched as she got out of the car and walked inside. A few minutes later, a man arrived. He was tall, with dark hair and a confident stride. I watched as he greeted Lily with a kiss on the cheek, and they walked inside together, laughing and talking as if they didn't have a care in the world. My heart sank as I watched them, the reality of the situation hitting me like a ton of bricks. This was Henry. This was the man who had taken my wife away from me. I wanted to march into the restaurant, to confront them both, but I knew that would only make things worse. Instead, I took out my phone and snapped a few photos of them together, proof of what I had seen, of what I now knew to be true. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with thoughts of what I should do next. Confronting Lily seemed inevitable, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for that conversation. I didn't know if I could handle hearing her admit to what she had done, to hearing her say that she loved another man. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the events of the evening in my mind, wondering how it had come to this, how the woman I had loved and trusted could betray me so completely. I felt like my entire world was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The confrontation. The following morning, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it was anything but. I needed to confront Lily, to hear the truth from her own lips, no matter how much it would hurt. I waited until she came home from work that evening, my heart pounding in my chest as I prepared myself for what was to come. When she walked through the door, she greeted me with a smile, but I could see the tension in her eyes, the way she avoided looking directly at me. "Lily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but cold. She looked at me, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice hesitant. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly as I spoke. "I know about Henry." Her face went pale, and she took a step back, her eyes wide with shock. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "Don't lie to me, Lily," I said, my voice rising. "I followed you last night. I saw you with him at the restaurant. I saw everything." For a moment, she just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing as if she couldn't find the words. Finally, she looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. "James, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for this to happen." My heart ached as I watched her. The woman I had loved for so long, the woman I had trusted with my life, standing before me, broken and full of guilt. "How could you do this to me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How could you betray me like this?" She wiped away a tear, her voice shaking as she spoke. "I didn't mean to hurt you, James. I don't know, I felt like something was missing, like we were drifting apart. And then I met Henry, and he made me feel alive again, like I was someone special." Her words cut through me like a knife. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that she had always been special, that I had always loved her, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just stood there, my heart breaking as I listened to her confession. "Do you love him?" I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "I think I do, but I'm so confused right now. I never wanted to fall in love with him, but it just happened." Her admission was like a dagger to my heart. She loved him. The woman I had spent my life with, the woman I had vowed to love and cherish, loved another man. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me, like everything I had ever known was crumbling to pieces. "I need some time," I said finally, my voice hollow. "I need to think about what I want to do." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, James. I never wanted to hurt you." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, her sobs echoing in the empty house as I walked away from the life we had once shared. The decision. The days that followed were a blur of pain, confusion, and anger. I moved out of the house and stayed with a friend, unable to face Lily or the life we had built together. I needed time to think, to process what had happened, to decide what I wanted to do. But clarity was elusive. Every time I thought I had made a decision, doubts would creep in, questioning my choices. Could I really walk away from the woman I had loved for so long? Could I forgive her for her betrayal, for breaking the vows we had made to each other? I spent hours thinking about our life together, about the good times and the bad. I remembered the early days of our relationship, the way we had been so in love, so sure that we were meant to be together. I remembered our wedding day, the way she had looked at me with such love and devotion as we exchanged our vows. And I remembered the years we had spent building a life together, the ups and downs, the challenges we had faced, the love we had shared. But I also remembered the way she had betrayed me, the way she had looked at another man with the same love and devotion she had once shown me. I remembered the lies, the deception, the way she had risked everything for something that wasn't even real. In the end, I knew I had to make a choice. I could either forgive her and try to rebuild our marriage, or I could walk away and start over, leaving behind the life we had built together.